also get out of it, right? There's so many of these trainings that I feel like there's information overload because it is like starting at like a baseline, and then there's like the played around with it, and then there's the people that have implemented it, and then I know like people that have built businesses off of AI, right? So like I'm not even at that level, and so it's really fun to have a whole bunch of different points of where we're at with AI and with technology in general, right? And it can often feel like, man, am I being left behind? Like, am I missing something? How am I supposed to catch up with this? And so we're going to kind of touch on a little bit of the history as well. And some of the Salt Lake people, we kind of did this briefly. We're going to dive into it a little bit more about some of the history of AI and technology and the sphere that comes around AI. So this is maybe Kimber. Kimber will take a lot of like the content. If you haven't worked with Kimber, she is incredible. And we'll let her introduce herself soon. But yeah, so the objective is gain a new perspective of the future of AI, right? And so I think with any technology, you get these perspective shifts, and that can be from generation to generation. It can be depending on what industry you're in, what business you're in, what goal it is, right? What is your goal of AI? My perspective of my goal is, hey, I want to get super efficient versus, hey, I want to build a business off AI. I'm going to have a really different perspective of how I'm looking at implementing this. And so really my goal is to help you guys have a new perspective of AI that's relative to your business, right? Because I think, again, with technology, there's so many ways you feel like, hey, I'm either behind or I'm just playing this catch-up game, but it's not actually implementing into my business. So why am I doing it? So hopefully this will help you take something away. And that's the number 2 goal, is like take away 2 to 3 practical use cases. I think same thing with, again, a lot of technology. It's like, if I don't know all the different tools to use, like I'm falling behind, or like, what is the point? And a lot, if you guys worked with me, like a lot of the things, like CRM is a great example. I feel like any CRM can do like 700 things, and it's like, hey, what one do I choose? I tell a lot of clients, like, choose 2 to 3 things that you know that you need your CRM to do, and then every other CRM is going to have faults or things that aren't going to just live up to that expectation. So really just try to narrow it down. And so we're going to take that same approach with AI of what are 2 to 3 things that really you can take today and implement to your business, and then being more prepared for the future. I mean, I'm 29, so I feel like I'm getting older now, which is fun, but it's still like interesting to see some of the shifts in just how fast technology moves. And I consider myself kind of a nerd. Like when I was in high school, like I was like listening and watching the Apple keynotes. I've like bought the new iPhone like every single year, not just because it's like new technology, but I like nerd out on that stuff. I develop websites, I do a whole bunch of stuff. So I feel like I'm pretty nerdy and stay up to date with AI or with technology in general. AI is the first one where I'm like, the speed at which this is going and the amount that this is going to change for the future is definitely the biggest gap that I've ever seen, right? Like the internet came around and there was a ton of shifts in just how people did business, right? Like almost anything. If you process a payment right now with a credit card, that's being powered most likely by Stripe, which is an internet company. If you're sending a text message, that's going to most likely now go over like an internet frequency. So there's just so many things. The internet came in and changed our day-to-day. But it still allowed us to really just be human. It was a very much like, hey, let's take our human things that we're already doing and then let's just take them digitally. AI is this first thing that I've seen that is like, hey, let's take what we're doing as humans and actually like replace humans with it. And so I really want us to be prepared for the future while not making it too fearful, right? There's like, again, and we're going to touch on this kind of fun, just some of the fear that happens around new technology. And then last is like, one of my favorite things with technology is just the efficiency and the time that we can save, right? So taking things that are mundane, and that's something that if you've worked with me, you're like, wow, thank goodness it sort of has tools, because I'm really bad at things that are just like tedious, repetitive, or things that are just like boring to do. And so that has been my favorite use case of AI, is it will take a lot of those mundane things, and then that just allows you to spend more time doing what's most efficient in your business and in life. And I think that's another cool thing about AI is we're going to have a heavy business focus, but there's a lot of people that are using AI in their day-to-day life. And so again, anything that can get you more time, I think is super valuable. And that's another one of our goals today. So any questions on that or anything else that we would want to add that we can make sure we're aware of? Beautiful. Okay, let's keep this rolling. But what is AI? I'd love to hear if you guys want to take your best stab at it without reading or with reading. What is AI? Like if someone came and asked you and said, hey, what is AI? Any answers? Anyone? You can cheat and read.
So I listened to a podcast this morning and they were basically saying like AI. It's kind of the scary part of the combo, but AI is trying to scale human beings and what they do.
Exactly.
Love
Love that. Anyone else? That's great.
It's software that is an artificial neural network that takes in every variable you can throw at it and finds new ways to think about them and combine them. And without anybody thinking about how to weight it, it decides how to weight the information.
That's one of the more technical answers that you'll get, which is awesome. And so that's exactly like he just laid that out, right? So there's a couple components that I wanted to talk about that just kind of address what AI is. And tell me your name. Sorry, I don't know everyone's name, so I apologize.
My name's Ian.
Ian, awesome. So you have generative artificial intelligence. So again, it's capable of generating text, images, information based off of all the information that it has been given. And so part of this in saying like, hey, how are we giving it this information is you have these things called large language models. And so really it's not like English, it's software that has taken a whole bunch of data points over time, combined those, weighted them so that it's then reading all these different data points. And then the generative part is where you are giving it a prompt. So when you are giving it that prompt, it is then basically just scanning this entire large language model in a really quick and scalable way that is then giving you an output based on that prompt. And so that's where you get the generative part of the AI. And that's where someone on the podcast as well was talking about, like, if you set a computer that has AI in an empty room, would it eventually like learn? And most people said like, no, because it doesn't have a prompt, right? And so that would kind of be like the next level of like, it can actually create its own thoughts and create its own needs and wants. That's where it gets like, to me, really scary. But because it is prompt-based, that is where this is pulling a whole bunch of these neural networks of information to then output based on, again, the human interaction is where all these language models live. And so that's where you start getting these creepy answers where it feels really human-like because of all the information that it has. And then GPT is just generative pre-trained transformers. And so it is a type of language model. So a lot of you have probably heard of ChatGPT. It is a type of language model that is built by OpenAI. And so OpenAI over the last, I think they've been around for like 11 years or so, I could be wrong. But they've just basically been building out the software on a large language model that is then user friendly. So they then combine the language model with a user interface that allows you to just type in a prompt and not have to code any of the software. They've done all the software on the back. So again, a little nerdy part, but kind of fun just to give a general overview of what AI is. Who's scared of AI? I think this is another fun question. Okay, sweet. Tell me some of the fears. I love having this, and we'll kind of get into the conversation. Ian, then Liz, and then we'll kind of go back. Start. What are some of your fears?
I don't know if they're exactly fears, but it certainly seems like, well, this is the first time that it doesn't seem like we're what's supposed to evolve. We're an agent of evolution, and this is the thing that is we're giving birth to, and so that's huge.
Massive. Yeah.
Have you guys seen iRobot?
I'm not saying anything else on iRobot that's fair sure is that close.
Also, just like the fear of it is it can it replace me?
Yeah.
In my job.
Yeah.
So I like my job and I don't want to replace me.
Exactly. Awesome.
For me, I think it might be a little bit fear of, like, I'm big on trust, and so I feel like something higher based upon their knowledge or something.
Yep.
And I want to be able to trust that they know what they're doing and not just something that ChatGPT spit out.
Yeah, awesome. That's very legit. Very good.
The only thing that comes to my mind is just Terminator.
All the movies. So Western movies are gonna come out. I haven't seen Black Mirror, but I heard that's also pretty scary and has some like pretty real aspects of some of the technology out there. Back in
So similar to some of the other comments, related to movies, I don't know if anybody's seen the latest Mission Impossible, but I think part of it, they're, it started to replicate some voices and prompts and things. And that to me, if you think about it, you got a call, it sounded like your mom or somebody, and it can really start to unravel real quick if it's not kept in check.
Yep, absolutely.
And I would just add to this, my main fear is that we're at a stage where it's evolving rapidly, to your point, faster than almost even us that peek out on this can keep up with. But there's no regulation around it. And we are all, used to regulation being, in the United States and all that. I'm not saying regulation is always great, but that is a piece that I feel like I would feel better about it as the regulation evolves.
Yep.
Because that is just, it's like the wild, wild west, right?
Yep, for sure. And regulations.
Robots,
Yeah.
so even worse.
And if someone wants to be like super wealthy and really rich, building AI security are gonna be some of the biggest companies that come out of our next generation for all of these same exact reasons, right? Of like, there is this big tool that is now mostly unregulated, right? There is like a lot of due diligence that a lot of like OpenAI, for example, is going through, but there is a ton of unregulated, so fraud and scams and things that are very complex start diving into, and so being able to combat that and say, hey, like if there is something that is causing this fraud, like how do we prevent that? So again, if you want a very solid business idea, there's one. But really getting into the fears is like, it's all extremely valid. And I wanted to jump into this. This is one of my favorite things that we're going to talk about next is, does anyone know Mark Andreessen? Andreessen Horowitz, VC, we're going to talk about him in just a second. He wrote a great article that we're going to dive into that's kind of the flip side of fear. But this was one of the things that he linked in there, and I can't remember, I think it's called like the Pessimist Archive or something. But essentially what they've done is they've just gone through history and found all of like the technology and new things that have come out that were innovative, and just found all the people that were really scared of it. And so they do like a ton of research into a lot of these categories. And so these were some of my favorites that I found through the clippings. One was, do we really need home computers? I'm like, what?
Until we can do dishes, I love
Yeah,
that.
like this one over here, it's kind of hard to read. It says, until it can do dishes, home computer remains of little value to families. I'm like, okay, that's interesting, right? Because it's new. It's like, okay, this thing all of a sudden has a ton of information and we're gonna sit it into our home. Like, no way, like until it can do dishes, like same thing, like I don't want to touch it. It's not getting near me. This is just, again, absurd that we bring these home computers into our houses when those are for, again, government agencies and big businesses that actually need to use the data. Who has a home computer? Okay, everyone has one in their pocket, right? Like your phone has more computing than any of these home computers ever would have had. Telephone industry moves to ban internet phone software. Who has used Google on their phone lately? Instagram, Twitter, anything, check the weather. Like billions of people, like almost everyone that has access to a cell phone has used phone software. And so like some of these clippings are like, the telephone and computer industry is headed for a regulatory brawl over a new new technology that lets two computer users talk to one another over the internet without having to pay for a long distance call. Right, and so this turns into this regulatory thing that isn't just like two people talking, it's what information is going to go over these phone calls without regulation, without it going over a cell tower. Like, we got to ban this, we got to get on this really quick because this could be a big problem, right? And so it's kind of just funny to see all these different things. I'll link it. I think I have it linked on the next page. Yeah, sorry, this is gonna get blocked.
can do that.
Can you do that?
Yeah.
So we're gonna read some of this. So this is, again, that link is in this article if you want to pull it up. But I have some printouts. We're gonna actually get into groups and have a little discussion. So Mark Andreessen, he's very controversial, so I'm by no means like behind him in some of his stances, but he is extremely brilliant. He is very smart, extremely tech forward. He was the co-founder of Netscape and Mosaic. So same thing, like when I very first started using computers, I remember clicking on Netscape before Internet Explorer. So again, like I'm starting to date myself and it feels so fun. I used to not even know, like, oh yeah, I just got on the computer. He was the co-founder of that. So he was really early in technology, and this technology, not just that again, was for businesses and government agencies, but like, hey, we want the home internet browser to be in every home, and we want it to be accessible to everyone. So he's extremely smart. He then sold that for I think 4 billion, and then started Andreessen Horowitz, who is incredible, like an incredible VC fund. Ben Horowitz is his partner. They're partners in Facebook. They've had incredible amounts of exits in just about any type of big company that you see that is tech focused. They most likely are part of it somehow, and they manage $35 billion. So basically to say, like, this guy knows what he's talking about when it comes to technology. And he wrote an incredible article and it's called Why AI is Going to Save the World. And so same thing, I was getting pretty fearful of AI for a lot of the same reasons. Like, I like information, I love people, I want to be able to verify, like if I see something and it's someone talking, like I want to know that it's them. And so for the first time I read an article that was by him that really opened my eyes to just kind of the flip side, right? I think we generally just human nature go to the fear or the downside or the things that we aren't sure about, especially with new technology. And he really helped us flip the script and say, okay, what about the flip side of this? And so I wanted to break up into groups. Do you want to just count it off, or we can just do rows? Let's do rows, will be easier. And I want us to just read this. It's a long article. It's kind of a longer article, so I just pulled kind of the general synopsis. Same thing, if you want to pull that up and read that at a later date, that has the full article. And same thing, like there's just some topics that I'm like, yeah, interesting to think about, but I think this is just the best overview. So if we can get into groups and read this, and then I want just 2 to 3 takeaways from what you read. And he really just talks about why AI is going to save the world. And so he really tries to get people again to change their perspective and say, okay, for every person that's going to be trying to commit fraud, what if there's that same evil on the other side that is trying to do good or trying to prevent fraud or increase their educational value essentially in the world. So I'm going to give us like 5 minutes.
Is
10
the
minutes?
QR code the same article?
It is the same article. Yep.
My eyes, I know I'm gonna.
Okay.
need to, like,
Yep. So this will be the same article, and then this is the like precursor. If you do pull it up online, that article, this page here is like the first big paragraph. He does like an intro. Let me see exactly where. Yeah, so it's right at the top. So it says why AI can make everything we care about better if you're pulling it up digitally. And so, yeah, so read it individually or with your group, and then get together with your group and let's get 2 to 3 takeaways from these paragraphs so we can start dissecting.
Oh, nice. Not enough, right?
We'll do 2 more minutes if that works, and then we'll have you guys talk amongst yourselves.
So to me, my person before he had. Like resource. And I'm reading this, maybe so it's still different. You know, like. Telling them. But it's no, that way it's like, okay, I think somebody versus thing else. This technology concept, like cheap. Instead of it's cool. So that was like a big offline, like. If I have to say, like, minimize it on the street, just come on as I went. Do whatever. I just don't weird about it. So, a lot of people do.
Better.
Like, wow. That's what I thought. What do you think?
I just wonder, if limitations, we're already kind of knowledge, ability to have better, and something like that, when I feel like society was getting more thankful for it, something that drawing for ourselves, or into us. And when this first child, AI, seeing human interaction, we need to make it all more touch. I'm sorry. Yeah, because even overtaking.
I think something positive that kind of changed my point of view a little bit on it. Together. I've been an artist for a really long time. So viewing AI as this new medium that no one's ever really been able to mess with too much. There's so much that's going to come out of that, so much creation, more opportunity for people to explore, more creation. So I think that's really cool. I did appreciate thinking about the types of decisions that we can make, and like it's helpful in a lot of ways, but so maybe you don't know how to handle.
I love how
it's
like, it'll be your.
So having
Something you don't have your.
like
I don't think it's bad. I think starting to. Like, we're all.
I'm not saying it should be all decisions, but also going back to like the tutoring thing.
All right, we can wrap it up in the next one. The spokesperson for your row.
The class little space.
We're gonna go row by row.
Right now, it's.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, sweet, thanks. Hopefully you guys got something out of this. We're gonna go row by row. I gotta say it. We're gonna go row by row and kind of do some of our takeaways from this. So hopefully we can continue our thoughts through row by row. Go to the second one.
And there's gonna be.
Do we want more time? I think this is interesting, and this is the part that I love, is like the conversation. Okay, let's open it up to the group. Let's start row by row, then just same thing, like, let's have an open dialogue about some of our takeaways. If you want to start at the front, and then we'll go back.
I'm gonna pass this around just so it's on the recording a little bit clearer.
Yeah, just one to two things that you and your little group came up with.
So what we kind of talked about was, I was mentioning to Michelle that at first, when I was using the AI, I felt like it was kind of looked at as a cheat tool, right? Like, oh, you're cheating your way through things, instead of seeing it as, hey, this is a resource. It's kind of having like a professor, a teacher, whatever, right next to you saying, hey, this is how you do it. This is the quick way. So, anymore, I see it more as a tool. And then Michelle kind of mentioned, that she confuses her with like the art stuff, like how can you consider yourself an artist if you're really not doing so? And is it gonna be, you're just seeing how she's confused that way. I don't know if you want to say anything about that, Michelle.
Well, if we can all be great artists, then are there any great artists? Is that, what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, and that goes for every discipline.
Yeah,
So that's where I'm at now.
I love that. Yeah, art is one that's an interesting take, right? Someone was talking about this and kind of gave the comparison of like a music DJ. What was it? Like they didn't use Marshmallow, the DJ, they used someone else. The same thing, he doesn't know how to play a single instrument, but he's incredible at creating music through beats that are all just technology, right? And so I think it almost creates new categories for art. And there's always in the kind of the flip side too, I think eventually another big opportunity in business is going to be like a verification that this was created by a human, right? Which is like kind of cool to think about, like it just always expands these things of, hey, like if I'm getting to point Z just a different way, it might be a different category and it might be in a different, vein of how this is respected, but is it still art? Technically, right? And so again, like I think that's a fun conversation and there's not necessarily right or wrong. But I love that, that there is like these opportunities to be like, yeah, everyone's a great artist, and what do as humans, like what can we hold on to that is created by us? And I think that always remains. So that's a great point. So sweet. What about the second row?
I kind of talked about the art piece as well. I've been an artist my whole life, and I also agree, it's like tapping into something that's totally new, but something that I appreciate about that is AI is a completely new medium that we haven't been able to mess with yet. And with any new medium comes creativity and learning these types of formula. And so it's a new expression that people can mess with and play with and create with.
Yeah.
So I think that that's really cool about it. And then I also chatted a little bit about how as humans, I think one of our faults in decision making can be our emotions, right? And so I like the idea of AI presenting logical solutions. It is a little bit scary thinking about those like people depending on that for the solution and not thinking through them, but I do appreciate removing some of that emotional aspect that humans have that can fault our judgment.
Yeah, for sure. I love that. Cool. Yeah, I think there's again on the art piece and like the emotions, I think there's two cool parts on that, right? Of like being able to take some of the emotion out for more like logic, and then also going to the art piece. And I think like a big part of like music or art is like the way it actually does make us feel, right? And so, for example, like there's replicas of the Mona Lisa, and then there's the actual Mona Lisa, and the actual one's going to make you feel because it was the actual artist that created it. And I think that's another really cool part about like the art aspect of AI, and this big open space is like there is still our human emotions that we'll never be able to just like take. And so if something doesn't make us feel like, hey, this is not genuine, or hey, I don't want it to be like an art generated by AI, I like my art generated by humans, right? It's like that emotional connection. I think that's awesome. So thank you for both those. Going up third row.
I don't know if we came to any consensus. I thought that some of these predictions seem pretty rosy and maybe the rest of the article goes on to temper it, but. It seems like everything's gonna be fine and we're all gonna have an AI assistant and be able to function as usual. I don't know if that's true.
It's a good one.
I'm still being the negative person. I still, like, to me, it seems like this is just gonna make it so everybody's expected to do more all the time. And I think right now in where we're at in societies, it's like people are busy and it's like it's a badge of honor, like there's no downtime or you're bad, right? So I think this is just the way it's gonna push it to that next level. Like, oh, your kid's not getting A pluses, well, where's their AI assistant?
For sure. Yeah, I think that's an interesting point, right, of like these things that are very rosy, and I think it kind of goes back to like the previous technology, like. If you go back to, again, like when home computers were the first thing, and then someone said, hey, eventually everyone's gonna have a cell phone. They're like, no, and then like, hey, that cell phone is also gonna connect to the internet, and they're gonna buy things and do FaceTime and video chat and text messages, like. You'll be like, dude, we can't even do anything other than an HTML website on this home computer, right? I think it's interesting. There's both sides of these conversations to really try to think through it again, like, are any of these predictions going to be spot on properly? No, right? But it is, I think, kind of interesting to see. And I think the other part about AI that I like about just kind of this open dialogue and this perspective is the democratization of AI and how accessible it is, right? Like a typical, like even a lot of technology that you had to purchase previously, like an iPhone when it first came out was not like, hey, anyone can just buy this. Like you had to have a phone plan, like it was very hard to access these things. And then there was the capital needed to build technology on top of that. And so I think AI is going to be interesting in terms of the speed that people create new things on it and how accessible it will be to everyone. So same thing, like just as like the counter, I think there's a lot of predictions too that I think we can challenge ourselves on as well, right? Like going back, so that's a great point. Fourth row, you guys got.
So I think the one thing that we were all kind of shocked by was how many different areas that this article mentions that it's going to infiltrate into our lives, including our children, education, medication. The list just keeps on going on, which is a little scary. One of the other takeaway was if this is going to infiltrate that deep into our lives, who's programming this stuff? That gets a little creepy.
Yep.
Because who makes those decisions? And it's not like we're voting on it.
Yep.
Right.
So that was kind of our takeaway with the amount of time that we had.
Yep. Cool. That's a great one. It goes kind of back to
It's spiral.
the regulatory stuff, right? It's gonna be big, and I think too, like the other piece that's really important through a lot of this of like who's generating it is like also as real estate agents and we're gonna get into a lot more of the practical. This is kind of high level, like again, nothing that's super technical. We're gonna get into like the actual like to-dos in terms of like taking it into your business. And so on that note, right, I think it's gonna be extremely important for us as real estate agents to really, as we're taking information off of AI or really the internet or anywhere of like, we still owe the deepest responsibility to our clients to verify information before we give it, right? And to go through and sift through this information because of that, right? And so I think again, it's super similar, right? Anyone could write a book that's just full of lies and I can publish it and say, hey, look, this is my thoughts and this is my opinion. It's up to everyone else to make sure, again, like how we're taking this and implementing it into our clients' lives is going to be more important than ever. And then two, like just now as the caveat, like please, if you're generating anything AI, like it's most likely not going to be compliant if you don't tell it to be. So please, like, I don't want to be responsible for telling you guys to like, go generate stuff or use prompts. Like again, verify that because it is super important, right? And it is like meant to be this tool that starts integrating into our lives, but it shouldn't replace our lives, which is awesome. So thank you. What about
Yes.
five?
I think it's kind of great for like saving time and everything, but at the same time, I feel like it's taking away from our human growth at the same time. actually going out and doing these things ourselves. But yeah, I don't know, that's kind of, I don't know, it's a little scary, for sure, that's all I have to say.
Well, I thought it was interesting that our young guy and us that are older all felt scared. And he didn't say, I wanted him to say, he's like, it sounds like we're in the Terminator, the movie. And my thought was similar to his, like, if a computer's doing all the work, where's the creativity for the artist? Where's the who's gonna write the stories, the histories, the novels, like some computer? I'm pretty much opposed to the whole thing, but that's just me.
I like it. Sweet. And that's what this is for.
Yes.
Yes. I was just gonna add something to that, kind of different perspective. I consider myself kind of like a artistic creative person too. I always grew up loving to do that stuff. I make music for fun. And any artist knows that, or at least like musicians, you hit this thing called writer's block. And I'm sure artists do too. It's like you run out of creativity and you're like, oh crap, where do I go now? Like you're just gonna run out of ideas and you don't know where to go. But one thing, like speaking for all musicians and just like artists in general, is everyone's inspired by something. Like, I think it's really rare that people just like have some crazy unique idea, like out of the blue, like from ground zero. Everyone's inspired by something. Like all musicians that I like watch interviews and they like talk about musicians that they liked growing up. And they're like, oh, it's like a little bits of my music like came from that inspiration. So I don't think it's bad that you like a little bit of a boost coming from somewhere. So if you got to type into chat GPT or whatever this is called, like, hey, can you give me some ideas about this? You can personalize it, right? Like, I like this genre of things, or I want it to be witty, just make it specific and it spews out some ideas, then that can be your starting point, because even the artists who we be creative, like they hit a block and they need inspiration too. So we could look at it like, I think it's bad, but at the same time, it might be a source of creativity. So you look at it like that, might be good. That's awesome. Yeah, I think again, like the kind of again, like the overall part of this is this perspective, right? As we kind of share our perspectives, we're all going to have different perspectives, and I think it's really fun to share because I think more than ever, like AI has two sides of the coin that are probably a little bit more black and white than a lot of other categories, but then at the same time has more gray area probably than any other technology that we've ever seen, in terms of like there's kind of always this middle ground on some of this, like things about creativity and art, and do we use it? What is our human connection to it? And I think the other part that really stuck out to me was a couple of these quotes here.
Did you have something? Yeah, I just want
Oh yeah, sorry, Dailies. We had like the,
Do you want to do your quotes first?
no, go, sorry.
I was gonna.
You guys were the
bring it
table
full
roll.
circle- Yeah, full circle back into our real estate world. And that is that kind of like what Nick said, is that this is here. So I totally think it's creepy, but if we embrace it and learn to use it in our businesses and learn to use it in a positive way, we're gonna be in a lot better shape than if we ignore it or we try to avoid it and it gets to do its own thing. And so I'm excited to learn how we can make it part of our real estate business so that it does maybe simplify and streamline some of the busyness of our work and allows us to be even more genuine in our personal relationships and serving our clients in the human connection. Because at the end of the day, it's still one of the biggest investments they'll make in their life. And we may use AI to help them run the numbers, help them make a less emotional decision, but especially if it's a primary residence, it is an emotional decision, and you can't take that out of any amount of AI.
Exactly, sweet, thank you, Davis. Oh, one more in the back.
Like, I get all the skepticism about it, but then my thoughts on the matter is someone's gonna use it. Whether it's for bad or whether it's for good, someone's gonna use it. Why don't you use it for what you want? So it's like, it's not like, I don't know, the best way to look at it is like, if you're skeptical of the negativity of it, then you be the positive part of it. Because regardless, it's gonna be used. Use it to your benefit and for what you want it to be, so that people who have a similar skepticism that you have will see the benefit because of it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, perfect example, right? Like, as technology goes, and again, it's like always fun to look back. If you guys are fans of like Gary Vaynerchuk, he's awesome in terms of like the content game. He uses like the credit card analogy, and my parents, I remember so vividly the day that I could buy, so I'm a huge sneakerhead, sneakers like through and through. And I remember when East Bay magazine, if anyone remembers that, opened up their online store for online purchases. And you just had to put in the credit card, and I was like, Mom, Dad, like, this is incredible, I can finally order stuff, and they're like, there's no way that we're putting my credit card information on the internet. It's not gonna happen. Just call and order it over the phone, because they can't store your information over the phone. I'm like, okay, but so right, like, there's these little technologies, like, eventually, like, again, we might not use all of it, but there just is gonna be a piece of technology, and AI is gonna be one of them that it's inevitable. And I think those are the ones that are, I think, the most like knee-jerk like reactions too, right? Like, there's just unfortunately, like, now there's not, like, we're not gonna go backwards. We're not gonna be like, hey guys, this AI thing, all of it was bad, even though there was a lot of good. And so now we're just taking it all away, like, it's here. And so I think that's a great point, right? Of like, how we use it in our agency in all of our, and really anything, like, let's talk about like some of the things, like, how do we learn? What are some of people's favorite ways to learn information or new things? YouTube, sweet, okay, love that.
Hands-on,
Hands-on,
I'm all hands-on.
beautiful, so experiences, okay, sweet. And then if you were to take that experience and teach someone else, how would you then teach?
Like by demoing or by doing it in action, pretty
Right.
much. Or engaging presentation, practice.
Right, and so someone's taking that, your experience, taking that into practice and then applying it into their own lives, right? And so I think that's something that's like super important too about AI, and like going on the scary side of things and like this replacement side of things is like, think of it, at least how I try to think of it, is like, this is a resource that's gonna help me take in a ton of more information than I would be able to on my own, and then let me sift through it myself and see what I want to apply. And I think that gives us a pretty good baseline.
Can I have just a little comment real quick? So blanket statement on all of this, and this was a conversation that we had a lot when we were first rolling out Command and all of our technology at KW, and we were in the infancy stages of that. Gary would talk a lot about the difference between functionary and fiduciary. And I'm not even saying that AI won't solve at one point in the future for fiduciary, but just as a simple example for us as real estate agents, a functionary can easily, or a fiduciary can easily do functionary work, but a functionary cannot easily do fiduciary work. And that conversation comes up a lot when we're talking about Zillow or, you know, any of those structures that have agents plugged into them to just be an agent at scale, right? Does this sound familiar? This conversation about being human at scale? So I like to use that when I'm talking about AI because we are leveraging the functionary in a lot of this so that we can be that fiduciary. That fiduciary, again, it could long-term change as far as what that looks like or what leverage we have from AI, but ultimately that that negotiation piece, all of that good stuff, the stuff that probably is what we love most about being real estate agents, that, you know, as it is currently, it stays preserved.
For sure.
So,
absolutely. And I think that's like where we can start getting into like a little bit more of the practical stuff too, right? Like if we're thinking about going back and using this, like the technology piece, right? Like if we were saying, hey, like we need to know how many people live in Africa back in 1984. Ian, you can go to the library, that's your resource, and I will use the internet, ready, set, go. Who's gonna win, right? You're gonna have to get in your car, drive down, look through the book, verify that information, right? And like, so there's these little tools as we think about like this functionary thing. It's like, hey, we're not necessarily even taking shortcuts. We are just getting to a resolve in a much faster way that we can then vet out, right? Like if you go pick up a fiction book, that's not real, that has stats about Africa, you come back and tell me the wrong number, like we kind of end up in the same boat, right? Of like, how do we actually verify this information? What are we doing? And so there's a lot of due diligence. So as we think about all these, again, concerns that people have in terms of the information and how we're using it, try to just think of like some of your day-to-day decisions that you've made, or some like the core things that you've learned, and then really just kind of audit yourself. Like, where did I actually learn that? Where it became of value to me? And even if it is someone else's experience, like AI can most likely still take other people's experiences based on just reading the same content as you. So it's kind of interesting to think through. And then these are the two things that I really liked out of the little section. Was the most validated core conclusion of social science across many decades and thousands of studies is that human intelligence makes a very broad range of life outcomes better. Smart people have better outcomes in almost every domain of activity. And so same thing, if we're using AI, like the same thing as if you just pull up an internet article, right? Like, I'll be honest, like I don't verify a lot of the stuff that I read. Like I don't read an article and then I'm like, okay, I need to go cross-reference all 10 of their sources. I need to then make sure that those reference, their actual experience and that they were actually there. And like, I just don't do that, right? And so really it is like, how do I just take this information at a very broad scale and then decide for myself, is this going to be usable in my day-to-day life, and then move on. So I think if we use it as just this broad general database instead of an actual intelligence that is here to replace us, that helps me think through some of these. And then the other thing is what AI offers us is the opportunity to profoundly augment human intelligence to make all these outcomes of intelligence and many others, from the creation of new medicines to ways to solve climate change to technologies to reach stars, much, much better from here. And so you can even take and think of like your smartest doctor, right? Like they're just researching textbooks that other people have done, right? And other people have gone through and done the trials and written up the summaries. They're then taking that research and then they are making their own new conclusions and bringing their own human intelligence to their current study and then implementing it, right? So if that doctor can then say, hey, I need to, instead of me going and reading all of these textbooks, and we can then take multiple textbooks of the same information, categorize it, where it's not pulling additional resources. It's just taking this information from this textbook and then helping us formulate these ideas. That to me makes us better, right? There's just not a downside to me in that.
So I just want to add, because this was the part of this whole article that we read, this was the word I circled, and this was my favorite part, because it highlights that we are augmenting human intelligence. So by adding to it, right, just by definition. So to use your examples, because I think your examples are helping like eliminate my fear a little bit. I don't know about anyone else. There's still time, but to the doctor point, right? So a doctor learns the practice of fixing knees. And they are passionate about it. They love doing it. They love seeing people become mobile again because they fixed the knee. And then something like laparoscopic surgery comes along. That doctor, I don't think, thinks, well, no, like I'm just really good with my tools and my hands. Like, I just don't want to do that. If it makes it more efficient so that doctor can take care of more patients, ultimately, maybe there's even a better outcome for the patient because their knee isn't cracked all the way open. Ultimately, they're not going to sit and go, well, no, like I've been really doing a good job with what I've been doing. They look at that as, okay, now you've really elevated the experience. So
yeah, that's beautiful segue, right? Into exactly kind of what I want to get to is as we now kind of shift into the practicality, right, of AI and taking these things like, right, for that doctor example, is like what we want to jump into now is like our real estate business, right? Of like using AI to then prompt AI based on the things that you're already doing, the things that you know that you're good at, the data point that we love, which is you, and being able to, again, enhance this. This is kind of where we want to go for the second half of this training, is diving into a little bit of some of the practical use cases where it should feel, hopefully, cross my fingers, less scary, right? If we're prompting it based on information that we tell it, that we're already giving to our clients and having it either give us a new perspective, automate something that we're already really good at that we can now give to more of our clients, or just again, save time so we can do more of our human interaction in, that is the end goal, right? And so I think if we kind of then start going back from that super high level of that big broad generalization and go to, hey, how do I practically use this, right? So like, again, if we go back to basically any piece of technology, there's going to be millions of use cases, and really the only ones that matter are the ones that you use in your day-to-day life. And so what we're going to start with is these 4 categories. Oh, sorry. I'm going to skip over this. Kind of talked about the benefits. No, I just lied to you. I'm gonna go back. Infinitely patient, infinitely compassionate, infinitely knowledgeable, infinitely helpful. This is something that helped me for the prompts. I hate writing. I hate bothering people. I hate like asking multiple times for certain things. And so this actually helped me in some of my prompts of like actually thinking through, like, and obviously it takes time to write the prompt, but I like almost felt like I was bugging AI. It's like, no, I'm so annoyed that I like am asking that question in a different way. So this
Like, can you keep going?
Yeah.
'Cause I don't-
don't hurt my feelings, AI. Like I'm really insecure and I have to ask this again. But just kidding. This will help just as we kind of think through some of these prompts and some of these things that as you're again kind of formulating and getting into this and is something that is new, is actually like remembering this, like AI is a software. Right now, it is not, its goal is not to, how do I undermine anyone that's putting information into this? Like, it is not. And if there is a case of it, like, then again, we'll like come talk to me. I want to see it, I guess. But seriously, as we think through these, like, it is kind of cool to think about like technology that you can just infinitely ask based on like your subscription to ChatGPT over and over again until you're like, okay, that makes sense for my business, or that makes sense for something that I'm trying to problem solve. So the 4 categories, we'll kind of break this down, and I'll turn it over to Kimber on her side of things with like the content. But just again, save time, get more efficient. I use mine for a business planner and consultant. Same thing. I don't read books. Like I don't know the last time I read a physical book, but I love podcasts and I love audiobooks. So I've listened to a lot of podcasts and a lot of audiobooks. And I love information. I love taking people's experiences that they've had in business and then trying to understand how I can implement that into my own business. ChatGPT is incredible at saying, hey, act as if you are Steve Jobs and I'm pitching you my business idea. Here's my business idea, poke holes in it. And it will just do its very best to pull all of the data that it has of Steve Jobs, and it will then try to give me a response that would be from Steve Jobs. Is it going to be 100% accurate? Absolutely not. But the number of new perspectives that I've gotten from ChatGPT, just based on it being my little sidekick, where again, like, otherwise I would have to go read a lot of books about Steve Jobs. He is now passed. So I would then have to like try to formulate like, hey, how is he going to perceive this? And I'm just going off my own intelligence, right? Which is just not good. And so again, being able to have this as like a business planner and a consultant, and then creative thinking and problem solving. So same thing, like I use this in my day-to-day, just through small things that I run into. I develop websites. It will tell me where code is wrong and where things just, I miss something. So if any of you use code or HTML or CSS, it is hundreds of lines of code that is not very fun to read, especially when something doesn't go well. And I either have to YouTube it or Google it and try to figure out where did I miss a line break or where did I do this? And it will help me problem solve because I can copy and paste the code and say, where did I miss something? And it will tell me where I missed it. So little things like that, right? Where again, it's not going to be a contract. It's not going to be anything that I'm actually going to deliver to my client. But I would spend probably on certain things an hour and a half scrubbing through code, trying to figure out where that is. Instead, it takes me 30 seconds to copy and paste that. And so I can now spend more time helping my clients with what they actually need to be doing instead of me trying to find a little code break. So thinking through that in the practical use case, and then copywriting and messaging. I think that's another one that's just very human and allows you to be super creative. And kind of like Alex mentioned, like this writer's block or this content block that we all run into, is just a real thing. And like using AI to help you overcome little things like that. Even though, again, it's your content, it's your ideas, the thing that you're creating, you can tell it and say, hey, write this in 3 different creative ways, or write this as if you're a lawyer or an attorney, and it will just, again, spit it out as many times as you need. That's still your content. So those are the 3 things, or the 4 categories that I wanted to just chat through, and kick it over to Kimber for the content side of things, and then we'll start playing around with it. Is that cool?
Who currently uses ChatGPT for your real estate business? Those are like, it's not an extended arm. I'm kind of scared. Yeah, I kind of. Does anyone want to say what they've used it for? I won't like make you like teach the rest of the class, just like one example.
Yeah, I'm just like, when I've sold a home, you know, I'd say quick post on selling the home, me as a realtor, put my name, blah, blah, blah. Client's last name in it and kicks it out fast.
Social media caption,
Yep.
right? Cool. Okay, so you all have this as a piece of paper in front of you, but if you want it forevermore in a Google Doc, then you can scan that as well. So this is really just, we wanted to lay out the specific step-by-step of how you go and get the best out of this experience, right? So creating a format, giving you some examples, of prompts. And then we'll go through that, and then Sarah will kind of go through like a real world case exercise for it. So this is for ChatGPT. I'll leave this up, you guys.
Yeah, can't get it.
Is it not working? I've been known to make a wrong QR code.
It's fine.
Okay, but it works.
I think it wasn't working, but I had to get it close enough.
Like, did I take you to like some random Canva template that you don't need? Done that too. Just kidding. Okay, and I'll pop this back up at the very end, just in case. Not everybody got it. Okay, so Sawyer brought up a good question, right? How did we learn? Artificial intelligence also has to learn. So right now, I go into ChatGPT for the first time. It does not really know that much about Kimber Walton, right? I am going to let them know. We even use like pronouns for AI?
Yeah.
We don't know. There's no rules yet. We don't know. Okay, so I let it know a little bit about myself and examples of the tone, what I prefer, how I want to sound, right? So let's pull up this first slide. Okay, so I wanted to show you all a few examples of just something that I've done in ChatGPT before, but I want to go through the paper that we have in front of us right now first. So context. So we need to give ChatGPT context to who we are, what we are, right? So I am going to say, example, I'm a 36-year-old real estate agent in Salt Lake City, Utah. I want to create an Instagram carousel post that my ideal client finds valuable and will want to save for later. That's my objective. Yes.
I'm sorry, it's so basic. Where do I find chat? Thank you.
I think we're gonna open it at the end,
Is it an
or we
app?
can open it now.
Is it an app?
So it's an app.
It's an app.
It's also a website. It's in the metaverse. It's in the eyeball in Las Vegas. That's where it is. You gotta go.
Kimber,
Yes.
question. So I'm in I just downloaded it. It was fast, but it said that $39.99 a year. That's not it.
Yeah, so there's versions. I think it's Chat GP. Is it 4 that's paid and 3 is not paid?
And so if you scan this ChatGPT, Google Bard's another one that's really similar. It's just Google's product. This will take you to the landing page to sign up, if you haven't already.
Which one? You think is better?
What?
Which one's better?
I like, so there's Okay.
The house divided. Do you like BYU too?
No. Utah.
You gotta stop the class.
Google Bard, I feel like is cool because it pulls some relevant information from the actual internet. So it can be a little bit more up to speed. I like ChatGPT a lot more for the strategic thinking quicker, and I like their user interface better. But it really is a big personal preference on it, like, especially for the content that we're trying to have it create. It'll be about 6s for you.
Cool. Great, and the functionality is similar,
Super similar, like,
we'll
Prompts.
still go through prompts and all that.
yeah, Bard makes it feel a little bit more conversational, so if you want it to feel like more of a friend. Google's for you. ChatGPT is more just like. I don't know, less personable. It's kind of the mean one, I guess.
It's to the point,
This is the point.
but it does give you emojis,
Yeah.
and I love that. Okay, so, all of this that we're going over in an example, I did through the app this morning. Okay, so we'll go over that in a sec. Okay, so I'm giving it context to what I want. And it has to know, like, what am I, right? Like, am I a real estate agent? Am I, what am I trying to do? And then tone, so I want the tone to be witty and conversational. And I want the post to have a strong attention grabbing hook to keep my audience swiping all the way through. So that's an example, but you know how much the algorithm changes. We can't learn it fast enough because it just is constantly changing as far as what these platforms would like. And so a year down the road, you probably aren't even going to put like swipe all the way through. There could be a different version of whatever's cool on Instagram. But for example, for like a reel or TikTok, if we're trying to create a script for a video, right? And we want them to watch for 1 minute, because the longer they stay on it, the more views it's going to get. Then I can just be very specific and say, that is what I am looking for, right? So, you know how when we get in fights with maybe our friends or our spouse, and usually it's because we're just not saying what's on our mind, like we're not telling what we need. You guys will be great at communicating after you're working with ChatGPT, because the more you just tell it what you need and what you want, the better outcome you will get from it. It's literally like relationship advice. Okay.
I won't judge you.
Yes. And it won't judge you. Okay. And then format, I want this. So this is important. Again, you're like, I didn't know I could ask it for exactly what I need. Yes, you can. I want this to have a strong hook as the title. Then each page will have a header and a paragraph underneath. It should end with a call to action promoting my free download first time homebuyer guide, right? So I just use that as an example. But let's say there's an offering, right? All of us are agents. We've sat in front of our blank screen before and been like, what's my call to action? My coach said I need a call to action. I don't know what do I say? Like, what do I do? I know I have, like, I could do a CMA for them, but like, what does that look like, right? So here's now your format for, this is what I want to do. Tell me how to do it, right? Like, make me look good is kind of how I feel like you're almost saying. And then the prompt. So this is the prompt that's important. So you've given it all of this context. Backwards way, not the right way, not the optimal way. It's just saying like, tell me like how to write a post about new construction, and chime in, Sawyer, if you feel like there's a good, bad example you're thinking of. But you didn't really go into detail on like who you are, like what you're trying to do, what you're trying to accomplish. You're just maybe sharing a few little pieces of information, like, well, I want to do a post, I guess new construction, like help me write that or something, right? So doing it the opposite way, where you're starting with the context, you're defining what tone you want, because you may not want to be always witty and conversational. Maybe you want this to be more of like direct, maybe very like focused on closing, right? Like, make me come across as a closer. I mean, we can probably find a better
descriptor for that, but those are the things that we can do so that when we get to the prompt, when we say, okay, what are the first things first-time home buyers need to know? We are going to get far better output from something like that if you do it in this format. So this is really just your absolute take-home guide. What would you add to that structure?
Yeah, so something that really helped me as well is like, it can be super conversational, it can be hard, same thing to like type that out. A quick little shortcut that I found is like, if you go into like your phone app, or if you have a map, and then just open up like the voice to text functionality and just start talking into it. And like, again, as if you're having a conversation with someone, hey, I'm trying to create some social media posts, blah, blah, and it's just taking that and then copy and pasting that into ChatGPT is a huge time saver. So that way you can just, again, the problem that, is it on the page? Yes. So that format that Kimber printed out is so money. So basically, again, if you just like talk that into your phone and then copy and paste it, that is the most helpful. And then again, like, don't be scared to tell it like, hey, this was off, or I want this to be redone in a different way. And it will remember, which is also a really like unique piece of like technology in the sense of like internet, right? If you do a Google search and then go back and start a new search, Google will save your search history, but it's not now using that context. So really take advantage of the context piece, knowing that like if it doesn't get it right the first time, there's a lot of stuff that you don't have to repeat again. You can just tell it and say, hey, that paragraph, and you can just copy and paste that paragraph, needs to be different, or again, just adding context. And if you do ChatGPT, sorry, I should pull this up on the over on the left, it will save your conversation history. And so that's another thing that I love is I've created 2 on my different Google accounts, and they're like each for different categories. And then I'll go revisit those and it will have all my previous history, which is awesome. So same thing, like if you're using a prompt, but then you just want to switch it up again, you can just go and copy that prompt from an old conversation, basically.
So example would be if he has a conversation open about the KW Home Hub. And he's already told ChatGPT, KW Home Hub is a collection of services that services 3 Keller Williams franchises, 765 agents, providing more services for agents to run higher level businesses, yada, yada, right? So he's already told ChatGPT about Home Hub. And so one day if he goes in there and says, hey, we need help writing a class about the value that Home Hub provides. This is what we need. We need a 30-minute class on that and give it more detail. Then it already has context, right?
Yep, exactly. And it's really cool too, because you can, so like, there's just little things that again are huge time savers. So another one that is like really popular is like.
We use your mic just for Zoom.
Yes.
It's fine. They have those little mics, so it's not the worst.
So another thing that's like a big time saver too in like social media or blog content creation is you can have it do like a bulleted list and say like, hey, give me 10 topics for my blog about this. It'll spit out a bulleted list. You can then go and read through that list. If you like number 7, you can say, sweet, write me a blog post about number 7. You don't have to like copy everything again or anything like it, or it's weird, but it knows like what number 7 is. And then you can have it write number 7, and then you can do a whole bunch more prompts, and then you can say, hey, now do the same thing, but for prompt number 2, and it will remember. So it's really cool. And again, just in the.
Can you write me a social media post on number 7?
Yeah, exactly.
So now I can do it in multiple areas, right?
Exactly. And then so that you can also use that with like, if you're doing a blog post and then you want social media to go in tandem with it, you can say, sweet, thank you for writing me that blog post. You don't have to tell it thanks, but it's really polite to do that.
Nice.
And then you can say like, write me 5 social media posts about that blog. And you don't again have to go and copy the blog or anything. You say about that blog and it will know, hey, I just wrote you a blog and now you want social media content. Sweet. And it does it. So
A human being might be like, you already asked me for too many things today, but something is AI won't.
it just does. Go with that.
Yeah, and then
So I'm just thinking the application. So I have saved a lot of the Keller Inc. or
some teller email that I've gotten that have a lot of social media prompts. Is there a way to scan that in or feed that in to ChatGPT, or however you say it, I don't know. And have it read that and then go almost, or maybe should I read it out loud to it or something? And then it can take that and feed off of it and write social media posts or write blogs from it. Do you guys know?
What would you, I don't, can it upload? Can you upload
can't-
things to it?
Can't
Oh, I
upload
didn't.
it. So
So I just have to read it out loud, maybe
Or
twice.
copy.
you'd have to copy. So right now it is all text based. So yeah, so you can either, if you have it in PDF form, you can copy and paste the information. It doesn't have a voice to text functionality, but if you just do.
Earlier with what you said, of how to get the text.
Exactly, yeah, so if you just want to read it, it will save you a lot of time from typing that, but yeah, copying and pasting is typically the easiest if you can have it in PDF form.
So if I took content.
Yeah.
Just because I think that's a great application. So if I have content already written that would give it the backstory, I can copy and paste that into it without even having to tell it all that. And then it
Yeah.
can jump from there.
So extreme example, you could copy and paste the MREA book into a subject and let it know about the MREA book. I will tell you, I haven't given it context with the MREA book and it knows the MREA book.
Yep. So yeah, so like, and then if you're designing anything in like Canva or anything, like that's text based, so if you have something that's like your buyer guide or seller guide, you can go into Canva, copy and paste that text. Put it in, and then again, you'll still want to give it context, like if you just put that information in, it will just basically say sweet information, you still do need the context.
So I've only used it like 5 times, but 3 of the times, probably, when I've copied and pasted. It uses like a background shading, like paste into my new document. Is there a way to like not have it do that? Have you guys run into that, or is that just the way I'm doing some?
It's a weird software that sometimes doesn't work, their new little paste little button, so they actually have a button, that should remove formatting.
That's a good point.
Yeah, but yeah, if you copy the text from the actual like, document, without that, it will keep like the weird formatting. They tried to fix it, it still sometimes doesn't work all the way, but there's that little like copy paste.
I have used, oh, wow. I have used ChatGPT for a while now, and I just love it. My husband's the one that introduced me to it, but either way, I love how you were saying how you explain all this stuff and it literally tells you. And then I like say, oh no, we'll take this out, take this out. Anyway, this one time my husband sent me a video to watch on YouTube. He's like, oh, just put it into ChatGPT and it'll summarize it for you. And it does. So this is probably like the best thing that we could have had as kids. Don't tell your kids about it, but it will literally like summarize everything into what you needed to, or like make it into. I was trying to make a post, and I'm like, I want it to sound kind of like people with kids, resonating with kids nowadays, and it gave me a lot of language that I could hear my 12-year-old son say. So it was really cool.
And so for clarification, for that video, you just pasted the YouTube link.
Yeah, I pasted the YouTube link and I said, please summarize this into
ways to search.
into like a sentence or two or whatever.
Sorry, we don't know. We talked about it too much. It's like, I'm still here. There we go. Fine. Thank you for those comments. Those are great. Okay, so I could have said this into my phone or typed it. I need to write a quick social media caption on what to look out for if you sell your own property rather than hire an agent. So content is hard for us as real estate agents, mainly because it requires 2 things: time and a lot of creativity. And I'm not saying that agents aren't creative, but sitting down, writing, like truly writing, coming up with things that either visual or otherwise. And also, wow. And also being the personality that's negotiating, that's on the phone all day. Usually those are 2 they're not two different people, but they're two different specialties, right? And so us having to do both all the time is hard. So if I went and put that in, what you're seeing right here, which I know is a little bit small, this is what pulled up immediately. So within seconds. So I didn't have to sit there and look at my cursor or think about it. And it just says, thinking of selling your property on your own. Before you take the DIY route, keep an eye out for these key considerations. Number one, research and pricing, just like that. 2, marketing without an agent's network plan, how you'll market your property effectively, negotiation and legalities. While selling on your own can save money on commissions, having a real estate agent can offer expertise and support throughout the process. Choose wisely, not passive aggressive at all. Just kidding. And then hashtags. There is honestly nothing that I need to change from that, other than that it doesn't know, unless I tell it, that I am a licensed agent in the state of Utah and all of my marketing needs to represent which brokerage I'm part of. Right, but I could have told it that and make sure all of my social posts have KW South Valley Keller Williams at the bottom or something like that. Literal nonsense. Crazy. Are you glad you're here? And not at like Lagoon. There are people just stuck in Lagoon. People, not you. Okay. Thoughts about that. The most simple thing, right? But I picked this subject because this is something, the burden of telling the public of why they need to hire me as a real estate agent, as a fiduciary, is on me, right? I have a huge amount of value proposition to sell your home, but part of my marketing is telling you why. That was just a quick little prompt, easiest post. 30 minutes, I could do 30 bucks, right?
And again, like
Yes.
and again, the scalability of that, right? Of like, if you have a smart plan going on or an email campaign, how easy it is to then again, take that same content. So you can be really congruent across all your channels, which is again, just like a really basic marketing 101, right? Like how do we be congruent across all of our marketing channels? And so again, if you're just a normal content creator, you're going to go and then you're going to get that post. Then you're also going to go put it into an email, and then you're also going to try to put it into a blog and make sure it's on your website. It will do all of that for you. So again, like going back to just like sharing more of what you're really good at, this just allows you to do that at scale so more people can get your information, right? So this is that AI debate that is kind of fun to like be able to just like remove that issue, right? Of like, hey, this is the content that I would be putting out anyway. I just want it to get out to more people faster.
Can you clarify that the current program have to be help creative and then we have to put it in each platform? Correct? It currently, you can't tap it into Instagram and Facebook and things and have it almost become an assistant yet.
Yeah, there are tools, and there's been some, so same thing, kind of nerdy. I've played with a couple. That's a huge compliant one. There's a company called Adept that's coming out that is basically that. It's like a whole bunch of integrations where you can basically give it a prompt, you give it your logins, and same thing, like I'm scared of that. But right now, ChatGPT is the content curation, and you have to place it in places by yourself.
And it's only text, no pictures yet.
Correct. And same thing, there's like AI generated picture software that's really cool that you can play around with.
Really good headshots.
Yeah.
I'm kidding on mine. No.
And so same thing, like, and for creatives, right? Like the creative and the image generation, and it's behind in a way. Like there's still some really crazy stuff you can generate, but like telling it to like create something that looks really nice that has all this context and images right now is just, I haven't seen anything that's great yet. Yeah, it is tough.
But the example we gave you is a way where really you're given the formula, right? So if I tell it, okay, I want it to have a compelling title, I want it to have a paragraph below, I want it to be a 5 carousel Instagram post. it's going to produce all of that information that really helps me create it like as a almost plug and play. And I'll give you an example of that for this one. Did you have another comment?
Yeah, some of the platforms though are using their own AI.
Yeah.
Give me 16 inspirational quotes that I'm gonna put on my Monday Instagram. Let me 16 inspirational quotes. And one, play at the top. That's fine. I mean, exactly.
Yeah, it's definitely people, we're all aware of it. Actually, fun fact on the 8th, KW is releasing our newest version of dynamic ads on command. And it has AI as far as the suggested posts within your ad. So that's cool. Okay, so here's an example of visual output that I need to get from it. So I said, I need a script for a 60-second reel on what you need to do before putting your home on the market. I was just like, I don't know, should we make that? That sounds fun. So the output of that, and I know it's small, but the nice thing is it breaks it down. Like, this is how long you need each of these clips to be. This is what you say. So the first is post smiling. So don't frown. Hello, homeowners. If you're planning to sell your home, we've got you covered. And this is the AI part. I love when AI is not as cool as us, because I'm not going to say in this 60-second reel. So I did not edit this. I wanted you guys to see exactly what AI put out. So not perfect. We're still needed. It's fine. And then the next clip, a visual, it's suggesting a home exterior with curb appeal. And then I can say, first impressions matter. Boost your curb appeal by tidying up the front yard, adding fresh paint, and fixing any minor repairs. Really cool. Does this now make that reel that you went to my class and you were like, I'm never doing that. Get out of here. Why did I even come to this class, right? Like, this makes that easier. Yes or no? You can do yes or no. What?
You still have to do the work.
Yeah. But then you're needed. Yeah, there you go. Okay. I think that was my last slide. I just want to pop up. Oh yeah. Okay. And then the other, I didn't put it because I don't want to add too many slides, but the other example I gave it was, help me write 3 emails that I want to send to follow up with clients that have come to my open house in Draper, Utah. Or you could just say my open house if you want to make it generic. It gave me back exactly what I needed to do, the 3 emails I needed to write. I can go put that into a smart clam. And then anybody that walks through my open house, I can go add them to that plan. I didn't have to think about the content. I just had to put it in there. So that was my 3rd example of use cases for you all. Dailies.
Are you gonna have these slides available for sheet notes later?
Yeah, we'll probably, could we just upload them on the hub? Is that the easiest?
Yeah.
Or,
Yes, we will do this too.
okay, you're up.
Sweet.
Thank you all.
Yeah, let's kind of close it out. And so, again, thank you guys all for coming. I love this type of stuff. It's really fun for me to like, again, have like open dialogue and then the use case. So hopefully this was helpful. The last couple things that I like to use mine and just kind of give you just my breakdown too of this just for 2 cents. And so something that I do a lot is with marketing is like plan and try to strategize. And same thing, like that's something that is a process that I feel like I've gotten decent at over the years. And so I've used AI as just, again, like a booster in terms of me putting out my same type of content, my same type of planning, but then again, being able to get to more people. And so this is, again, it follows really similar to Kimber's stuff. So use her same prompts, and then it's basically just this kind of outline. But so like, for example, create a marketing strategy for the second half of the year, give it the context, so explain your business. Number 2 is big. So currently, like the things that you're currently doing is, again, that context that is really helpful in terms of the responses that I've gotten back that I've actually felt we're valuable is like telling it like, hey, this is me, this is what I'm currently doing. And that takes a little bit more time. But going back to those threads, it's awesome because again, it reminds it, or it remembers like, okay, this is what he's done previously. And then give it an overview of your clients and your main demographic. That's been another huge thing that, again, in running a marketing agency for the last 7 years or so, one of the biggest challenges with my clients is who are you actually selling to? Like, who is your demographic? Not like, again, just about any business to say,
Everyone's
like,
the wrong answer.
yeah, everyone is the wrong answer, right? Everyone wants to say everyone, but like, who are you really marketing to? And having that guide content is something that is huge. So if you look at like any brands, any big successful brands, they know exactly who they're marketing to. And of course, there's going to be outliers. Like that just happens. And in real estate, like if you're going to take a client that's going to be an outlier, but it's going to be good for your business, like do that. But in terms of like your brand and what you're trying to build, like knowing who your demographic is a really big deal and will formulate a lot of the content and a lot of your strategy. And so again, plugging that piece of context into some of your marketing or some of your social media into it is really helpful. And then tell it what strategy you would like to use. This again goes back to that human aspect. There are so many companies like same thing. If I've worked with a lot of you guys, or like sometimes I'll be showing you guys a new tool and I'll be like, I wish I created that platform or that software because it's so cool. So I think all of us, and going back to like the art comment, right? Of like, we all have inspiration. We all have like different things that we're pulling from that we're like, man, I really like that piece of, art, where I like that strategy that they use. But then really like the hard work is then how do I formulate it based on the context that I've given it? How do I formulate that for myself? And I'm still going to use my own ideas. I'd also love for AI to be like, hey, these are some of the things that I've seen that I really want to use. How can I then implement that? And again, is it going to be perfect? No, but is it going to help me strategize and think through it in a way that I would otherwise have to go and like do deep research? Absolutely. And then tell it what you want it to help, or tell it that you want it to help. So again, it's like that follow-up. So on the context is like, again, being really specific on what you want it to help with. And so I'll take something like this. It's a really big general like category, and then really take advantage of the threads and being able to reference this over and over again, right? So for example, like I used to put all these in just like a used to be a Google Doc, and then Canva, I love like the design, making it look nice. But then I was like, okay, I just need the content. I need to be able to reference this really quickly. So you can almost think of this as like this ongoing document. And that's been so helpful for my business in terms of being able to then have all of this context and being able to reference it back and over again for scale is really helpful. So that's a little bit of an insight of like how I'm using it. And then again, the money is in the follow-up is what I say. If it's too specific or too broad, you can tell it that. Once it's right, you can again go back to those 2 to 3 items that you want to implement through it, and then get again an outline of those strategies around there and really break it down. So again, it's just like learning anything, right? If you again go grab a book and read it in the library, like most likely you're going to be like, okay, so I need to take a couple of those points, even if it's the MREA, right? You don't read that and like, okay, so I'm going to do every single one of these things right now in my business. You start segmenting it out. And so using this as an assistant really helps create that content and again, following that content piece. So let's close it out. And really like the last main point that I wanted to leave with is going back, sorry, I don't know your name, I apologize, but at the end, right, is like, people are going to use technology. Like, unfortunately, like, even if all of us banded together and said, like, let's start the AI revolution of ending it. Like, AI is never going to work for us, and we're going to make sure the entire world is never going to use AI. It's just unfortunately like, not going to happen, right? And so new technology isn't going to stop for us. But new technology is accessible to us. And so as you're thinking through like your content, your business, all of these things, like really understand that in most of the things and most things in business, it's not going to be like cut and dry. If you don't use AI, there's going to be tons of agents that are going to be very successful that don't even touch AI, that don't have any desire to get into it and play around with it, and your business is going to be just fine. I always go to the question of like, what is the downside of using AI? Or what is the downside of having a good brand or good marketing? And almost any time like you open those types of conversations up, there really isn't a lot of downside, but there is going to be a lot of upside, right? Because of where technology goes and where things continue to move, like, it is your choice. And hopefully we can be a help to you, and hopefully it becomes a tool that you can use, and that we can continue to all like elevate each other and each other's businesses through this technology, and again, using it as a force for good. Like, even if anything, if you're like, no, this is not for my business, try to find something that you're like, hey, there's something that's really good in my life. How can I improve it via AI? And I think you'd be surprised at some of the things that you'll be able to take away from that as the worst key thing. So any last key takeaways or questions, then we'll be hanging around here until about 3. If you guys have more like direct one-on-one questions that we can dive into. So any key takeaways or anything else you want to end with?
This would just be, I feel like this is like the coach moment, right? Like if I'm resisting really anything, right? Who has a real estate coach in here? Anyone? So if you're resisting something, that's when your coach like gets the claws out, right? So if I'm noticing at the beginning of this class, like I'm resisting, it's like, it's scary, like it doesn't make sense, like all of those things. I think ultimately what's helping me shift my thought process on this is going back to like, what's my goal? What do I want to do? Like, what is my overall why, right? So for a lot of agents, being able to help a certain number of families this year, next year, over the next 5 years, that's a big thing. You have that on your walls, like you're working towards that goal. Me having an amount of influence in the arena that I'm in and being able to influence as many people as possible is my why. So if I go back to that, this makes that easier. So then it's easier for me to lean into it when it attaches to, it's going to make me helping more people easier. It's going to make my time. I mean, how quick was that social media post? How much more time do I have now to prospect, to call people? That would be my challenge overall to you as the resistance things pops up, because ultimately a lot of that stuff that could actually potentially be scary or at one moment in time, Kimber Walton can not really do anything about it. Sawyer Norman can't do anything about it. And none of us really can. So then putting that focus on what we can control and how it attaches to our overall goal. There's my coach challenge for you.
Mic drop.
Yeah.
Done. Sweet.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That's one
awesome.
takeaway. You guys all have takeaways.
Yeah, any other takeaways? Anything else we want to share?
Question.
Question. The monsoon's over.
So somebody that's willing to acknowledge my fear of the creepiness, but willing to take on technology because I love streamlining and having processes and implementing in my business. Where do I start? Like, I haven't done anything with AI. So where do I start? And how do I know what's vetted? Like, I know ChatGPT is like kind of like the buzzword of the day, but where do I start? How do I know it's vetted? How do I know that I'm actually signing up for like the real thing? I mean, like, I don't know, like, I literally know nothing. So, give me a place to start.
Come talk to us on signing up for things. I have not paid, well, I've done all the free trials on a lot of things and don't pay. So like, there are gonna be, again, there's a lot of scams and there's a lot of things that like, so come talk to us and we can at least point you in the right direction. ChatGPT is built by OpenAI. They do have a free tool, essentially, that they have a paid version. You can get a lot of your stuff done on the free version. Google Bard is built by Google. It's also free. Those are the 2 starting places that I start. And then in terms of like taking it into your day-to-day, what I did was looked at same thing, the things that I didn't like to do that were tedious, or things that were not like proprietary necessarily to me, right? There was not anything like, again, so I'm not going to do like a, hey, AI, send this email. Like, I just personally like to send my own emails to my clients, but I was going to do and say like, hey, think of my strategy for the next 30 days of this social content, or think of my strategy for this outline that I'm going to be writing. So think of the things that are repetitive and that can save you time. And then look at tools that you can possibly replace with AI is the biggest starting point that I found. Just because it's twofold, right? It's things that, again, even if I send something like that is just generated by AI that people aren't gonna know, like, that's great. And then two, if I get more time back in my day to do the things that I actually wanna do, that to me is like worth a lot, right? And that's just technology specific. So you can come talk to us and we're happy to help you. Like, but yeah, starting with like kind of like a time audit of the things that you spend a lot of time on. And then just simply just like saying, okay, can this be replaced by AI? And then again, come talk to us and kind of strategize through it. But that's kind of my starting point. So that's it's very general.
Great, thanks.
Any other questions to close it out? Cool. Appreciate you guys all being here. 2 hours, that's a long night. So appreciate all you guys. You know, like I said, we'll be hanging around here. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Dan, or Dan.
Do you work?
South.
That's me too. Nice.